I'm jumping right in. This is chronological, but I'm not giving away anything. Still more spoiler. I was reading you chapter 20. I started my career as a yes man, possibly because I thought the offers would dry up, but moreover, I believed I just had a great work ethic. I said yes to virtually any show and any pay or lack of, even if I didn't exactly know how to pull it off. Can I play a certain date, you ask? Well, I have two shows already that day. Where are you located? And how many hours do you need? If it was physically possible, I was down. The older I get, the more I've lost that tenacity. I wouldn't say it's a resting on the laurels situation, but I can admit, after so many years of decent relationships with club owners, they've been calling me. I literally don't have to work as hard now to book a show as I used to then. It's a trajectory that young you definitely plots a course for older you. If you get very lucky and you can become much more persnickety about the work you accept. I encourage that, in fact. The criteria for where I play these days is more selective, but it has also never been simple. I base all my bookings now on their proximity to food. And funny that we're doing Let's Do Lunch because this was written a year ago and it still happens. I base all my bookings now on their proximity to good food. That's it. The Hard Rock Casino, which that's actually now defunct. It's now the MGM, and I think it might even be turned over again. The Hard Rock Casino, with its overpriced chicken tenders and no comped bar tab, was was only booked as often as it was because there was a baller gyro place across the street that we loved to go afterwards. I told the band it was great publicity to play a big name casino so frequently, but I just wanted gyros. Put-in-Bay, 18 years in, was because of the Forge and their great breakfast crepes. You can't mess with it. Even a trip to our beloved Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is merely a side quest. The real mission while in Cleveland is to experience the West Side Market. Their corned beef is the best in the world, no debate, sit down. The Oracle, that used to be a Burger King, has a real hamburger joint next to it called George's Lunch. I could go on, and in fact, I used it. My last attempt at writing before this was a food column for a local entertainment zine with a Z, called Buzzbin. My monthly installment was called The Not So Starving Artist. I was already performing at so many local bar and grills, it seemed only natural to review the food. It got me free goodies, possibly cemented my placement on a few entertainment rosters, and gave some decent publicity to local restaurant tours. What's not to love? My journalistic endeavor only lasted 4 issues, though, with the demise of Buzzbin magazine and the fact that my friend Dan Kane had started doing a very similar review column for the proper local newspaper. Dan. I love it. When Tim Banner and I took our band Broken Transmitter on the road with Wizard World Comic Con, we decided to resurrect this food review idea because inspiration has struck in a new way. Through a happy accident, I landed us an opportunity to appear on an episode of a Food Network show called Carnivorous with host Courtney Rada. Courtney's film crew was coming to Cleveland to interview and cook with our resident Iron Chef, Michael Simon. Her producer thought it would be apropos to do an opening bit in front of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in which a band of street corner buskers would be performing as a passerby, which is Rada, randomly joined in as lead singer, riffing impromptu lyrics about meat. I am, for the record, always into goofy ideas like these. Blame it on my love of yes and. Roll with it. And you guys are probably all theater kids. Yes and is someone will say something ridiculous and you never contest it. You just go, yes, and you add to the story. It's the basis of improv. And it should be the basis of just your whole life in general. Yes, and. Yes, and. Just go with it. I've also loved the idea of busking. In parentheses, busking is basically playing on a street corner in a highly populated area, hoping for tips. The Violent Femmes were at buskers at first until the Pretenders, guitarist James Honeyman Scott, saw them performing on a street in front of the Milwaukee Oriental Theater before a Pretenders concert. The trio were personally invited in by Chrissy Hine to be one of the opening acts. The Violent Femmes were then signed to a record deal shortly after. I say that I like the idea of busking because of fairy tale stories such as those. The snobbish part of me, however, would rather just book a normal paying show or pretend to be a busker on TV. So here we are. Roll the camera. I signed a sync rights agreement that allowed the production company to use one of my original songs in the show. And I even brought an instrumental mix of that song so we could pantomime over just in case, which means they would play in the background and we just pretend. That's how they make music videos. We over prepared because Cleveland was an hour from where we live. and we had zero chance of popping home for something that we needed. We arrived an hour early to the shoot, nervous and excited to possibly be on TV. This would also be our first encounter working with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, who were very on board with being filmed for pretty much any reason at all, because all press is good press. The crew were extremely nice. Rada was hilarious, and overall, we had a blast, playing one repetitive riff over and over and over, take after take, while Rada kept improvising funny lyrics about meat, because that's what her show specialized in. The producer kept yelling, "You can't say that," after ad-libbed lines about wanting to jam out with her clam out. I wish, sorry, this is not all ages. Okay, we're good. I wish we could have gone along with her to meet Michael Simon, but we were not invited to witness the rest of her day filming in Cleveland. Instead, we were handed a check for roughly $150, which I assume is a basic stipend for background actor work. We went on about our day. Of course, that means lunch at the West Side Market, to gush over this fame that was to come. Even the chance to be seen on a national level holds the same excitement as a lottery ticket in your pocket. You have an unexplained good feeling about it, and you start thinking, what if? We checked in every few months to ask how editing was going for our episode and see if they needed anything else. We probably annoyed the crap out of them. It's a different word in my book. When the episode finally aired on the Food Network, our whole scene had been cut open. I have unfortunately experienced this a few times. It is definitely a bummer to watch a show that you think you're in and then there's no you. We had nothing but a few videos and pictures shot on the day on our phones to prove it ever even happened. Pictures, a few laughs, $150, and a fantastic corned beef sandwich. Having seen a glimpse of how to make the making of a food show, and with this new opportunity to tour around the country with a comic convention, Tim and I started a YouTube food review series, also called The Not So Starving Artist, a title we reinstated from my old articles. Everything was shot and edited on our phone, and usually finished before we even had to check out of whatever hotel we'd been accommodated by the convention. Those were great days, and lots of delicious meals. I still I still think that I could host a television show with this premise, on the odd chance that you, dear reader, happens to work in television, wink wink. Until that pans out, though, I'll likely continue to keep an eye out for the next tempting gastropub or hoity-toity food spot that I'd like to check out and see if it conveniently is next to a dive bar that might pay my asking price. November 16th, 2024. This is chapter 35. It's been a bit of a back and forth between bass and guitar lately. Hey Monet's final show. This is a little precursor. I played bass in the band Hey Monet for a while. And now in the Tenderhearted Rascals with my friend Gwen. Hey Monet's final show, Tenderhearted Rascals' first show, followed by a recording session and a photo session, an imaginary cookie show, practicing for upcoming gigs with Thomas Nicholas, and now a private party. That's how busy you have to stay when you're doing it all the time, and this was written after I'd already kind of retired. Let the record show that I highly dislike private events, at least as a solo act. With my friends by my side, I can confidently walk into any performance hellscape without as much as a second thought. Alone, I'm crap. I said something different. I've stopped doing things like this for the most part, but the money was right, and I'm publishing a book. Yes, you should feel pretty awful right now. I'm doing this for you. All right, I take it back. My friend Chris Donley, he does private parties all the time, and when he can't accept one because he's already playing somewhere else, he tries to throw me the work because he's a pal. The plan was to meet my family for lunch to celebrate the birthdays of my brother, my sister, and I, and then head an hour away to play the birthday party of a complete stranger. My siblings all share November birthdays. We tend to get lumped together for convenience. Chris Donnelly's birthday is on New Year's Day, so his celebration is always lumped together with a hangover. Actually, when I text my mom Happy New Year, I text Chris Happy Birthday. It's their back to back, and they've been that way for 20 years. Even just 2 weeks ago. I missed a good number of parties myself over the years because I was always working. You're only a working musician if you're constantly playing, and the first dates to always get booked solid are your weekends. If you're very lucky, some odd weeknight bookings will come, and perhaps you can take a Saturday off every now and again. This should resonate with servers and bartenders because they share the same dilemma. Fridays and Saturdays are where the money is. Even with a steady amount of residency style weeknight gigs, I often still allowed all my weekends to get booked year after year. This grew to be very taxing on my family and non musical friends. The first thing you lose are invitations to events. Loved ones will take for granted that you're probably playing somewhere because that's what you told them the last 17 times they invited you over. Next will be your extended family. If you're very lucky, they will occasionally come to the bars to watch you play. Mine often did. Partially because they liked the performances and partially because it was the only way to visit me. I mentioned previously that there were times where my view from the corner of a bar was similar to being behind bars. And that's a metaphor. And this is your family planning their visitation. The hardest one, though, and this was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, is when your children ask you to be around more. That one stings a lot. I play less these days, and I've regained a good deal of those elusive Saturdays everyone's so fond of. I'm home enough nights now to realize that my children never come downstairs from their rooms. I've traded late nights for early mornings, so 9 p.m. feels like what 2 a.m. used to. All in all, it's pretty nice. When I play, it's because something sounds fun. Or like tonight, the money was too good to pass up. An actor would call this offers only. That means that they're not actively searching for work and they don't plan to try very hard to attain it. But if the part sounds fun and it's guaranteed without an audition, they'll do it. And I employ this mentality with my performances. With a long day planned, I packed my CRV and headed to the restaurant to meet my dad and siblings. Harry V waited in the car while I enjoyed a burrito inside. This goes against literally everything I've said so far about keeping him protected the utmost way. These days I try very hard, and today I'm not trying it hard at all. I'm just throwing that all out for transparency. My gear, luckily, was unharmed in any way when I returned to the parking lot and headed off to Ashland. Um, Earlier in the book, I mentioned getting broken into it. Closely guarding all my equipment these days, and this was a day of abandonment for that idea. Ashland is the home of my famous radio blunder from my youth and the birthplace of my friend Chris Donnelly. Tonight's party would have practically been in his backyard. The drive was all back roads for an hour. Ohio is a few clumps of fun cities like Cincinnati or Columbus and far stretches of pretty much nothing like where I'm at now. I didn't I don't get the allure of living in the middle of nowhere, but I totally understand that there are people who prefer it. Maybe this adds to my dislike of private events. I could be walking into a trap. like like our sound engineer friend Tim, who showed up to what he thought was a job interview in rural Ohio, only to be murdered by the Craigslist killer. That happened a couple of years ago. I think of that because of things that have happened like that here in Ohio. Ohio is the setting for horror films, more than you may have noticed, and there's a reason. I believe we hold the record for the most haunted houses and with a bullet or hatchet. Mathematically, the odds are this will be not bad. In fact, I have vetted this request enough to feel confident it's just fine. However, these folks only settled for having me because Chris Donnelly was unavailable. What if they hate what I do? The average non musician assumes that if you play professionally, you must know every song ever written. That happens a lot. As if it were a college course for cover musicians, and the final exam to get a degree was a 97-hour recital of perhaps every pop song since 1950. The total number would equal more than the population of mayflies at Put-in-May in summer. Thank you for laughing. It makes me feel good. Were I to attempt to count the times someone asked me for a song that blatantly is out of the style that I perform at my gig, I typically reply that I don't know that one. And I'll even add something de-escalating like, that sounds like a great song though. I'll spend some time with it. As I offer that response, I don't presently know their favorite song. My favorite, I say facetiously, reply is, yeah, you do. As in, someone goes, hey, do you know how to play Wagon Wheel? And I say, no, I'm sorry. They go, yeah, you do. That happens more time than you would believe. Why in the blank would I lie about knowing the song? I'm being paid to try to make you happy. Even if I dislike the song, I'll play it to shut you up. I digress. Of course, I'm simply highlighting the bad instances here. Most nights are highly enjoyable. The rough ones just stick with you. Ask a server about their shift, and you'll likely get the same review. It's the bad tables that haunt their nights. We care more than you assume we do. Regardless, I can navigate this environment in a bar, restaurant, winery, resort, what have you, but in someone's home, where do I go? Don't even get me started on weddings. I've stopped doing those years ago for similar reasons. A younger, fresh faced me was advised that that's where the money was. What you're rarely warned of is that the star couple wants a Disney fairy tale meets Bollywood style event on a shoestring budget. They also assume that you know every song in recorded history and that it's not inconvenient to ask for a laundry list of requests that you don't typically do, even when you state that that is not part of the deal. Expect that someone will want to have a microphone for a priest or equivalent, maybe for speeches, obviously to play the processional on the opposite end of the venue, uh, have dinner music ready, and about 12 more things that I'm probably forgetting too. You must show up early with your equipment before the guests arrive, as well as be there after everyone leaves to tear it back down. But this is the big payday everyone tells you about. Word to be broken down by hours worked. It's often less than a typical bar game. Add to that that this is someone's biggest day of their whole life. If that's not pressure, what is? The first wedding I played was a nightmare template for everything that followed. A couple that had seen me perform solo at a restaurant called Cheeseburger in Paradise, which was actually a lot of fun, where I once was the house act. They took one of my goofy business cards, the one that said soap dispenser salesman or something I thought was funny because I never needed business cards before. They asked if I did weddings. And I had already been given this great advice that these were the jobs you wanted. So I said yes. I said yes to everything back then. I told them my inflated fee, to which they immediately asked if there was wiggle room on that. I was new at this. I hate bartering, so I panicked and I blamed the price on the gear that I need to bring. And their quick reply was, well, we have gear you could use. Now can you reduce your price? Okay, that's fine. The date went into my plan. 2 nights before the wedding, it had dawned on them that there was a song that had to be played on the big day, and they told me about it. And I did my best to decipher this song. I did not commit the lyrics to memory, though. I had a big binder of printed pages, because at that time, this was way before iPads even existed. In fact, it was also before GPS, if you can believe. We're talking 20 years ago as of this writing, and in that pioneer time, you would have to print out a map of turn by turn instructions from a website like MapQuest, and that's what I did. On their big day, my first wedding experience as a performer, I headed nearly an hour away on solely printed out instructions from MapQuest. The venue was in the middle of nowhere, locations that Ohio have many of. I get lost, like bad lost. The address I had was not easily found by the technology of the time. I arrived late and was met by a very angry wedding party, already set up, in formation, ready to start the event. The song that they had asked me to learn only the night before was their wedding march. I know. My being late delayed the entire start of the wedding, and it was an awesome way, I'm being facetious, to introduce myself to their guests. Scrambling to set up and to not create further delay, I asked where the sound system was that they were to provide, and the one that knocked down my price. And they pointed to a Walmart style karaoke machine that stood about 2 feet tall, with a single 8-inch speaker and two microphone inputs. Are you effing kidding me? That's what I said quietly in my head. All right, is probably what I said out loud. Whatever, we persevered. I plugged into their inadequate means of amplification and set my music stand up with my binder of printed lyrics. And that's the one I used back then. I flipped to the song that they just had to have as their wedding march, and I began to strum. I was going to be very slick. I was going to wait for the bride to start walking before I began the vocal. I hung on that initial looped riff for a while. And not that it's of urgent importance, but I'll tell you it was I'll Be by Edwin McCain. It was an otherwise beautiful summer day with the light breeze, actually a perfect day for an outside wedding. The bride began walking. I began to sing. The strands in your eyes. Then a perfectly timed gust of wind took my lyric sheet and sent it soaring the way I'd wished all my paper airplanes would fly as a kid. It flew towards the setting sun in an almost poetic and movie-esque kind of a way. The signs were clear that I should never do this again. I mumbled the entire remaining lyrics to someone's wedding march. I'm almost certain there's video evidence of this somewhere. Perhaps a VHS tape they watch on every anniversary. After the ceremony, I played to a crowd of mostly elderly grandparents or great-grandparents and children running amok. No one remotely cared, even when I just abruptly stopped. I went on the search for anyone resembling the wedding party to ask how much longer they needed me. I just assumed they were off doing photos or whatever a wedding party does immediately following a ceremony. I eventually found the entire crew on the odd side of the grounds in a sort of pavilion, the same kind you'd see at the public park, maybe where you'd have a kid's birthday party or high school graduation on a shoestring. They were all huddled around a TV stand. The setup we were all used to from school on those days, the teacher didn't actually want to do anything. So they opted to have a movie with the lights up. The bridegroom and all their best whatevers had changed into Ohio State football jerseys and they were watching the game at their wedding. I know. Virgin white satin and black tuxedo wool traded for scarlet and gray cotton. Quite a spin on the mental image of the new bride saying she'd like to slip into something more comfortable. I digress. When approaching the bride to see if my prison sentence of a show was fulfilled, she replied, "Oh, you're still here?" She handed me an envelope full of money and I never saw it again. I should have learned from that experience, but I went on to do dozen more weddings over the years, each one having nuances of that first one. Private parties of any kind also share notes of that experience. I actually received a text 2 nights ago from this very person who hired me tonight, including YouTube links to a few songs that they'd love, and they would just love if I did, and I did not learn them. They weren't even remotely in my wheelhouse. Dear God, why do I keep saying yes to these things? When I arrived, I've never felt more like a clown hired for a kid's birthday party. Not for any other reason than my dissociation lately with entertainer life. They were very kind and accommodating, but I'm older than ever now and traipsing around some stranger's home. How do they know I'm not a crazy person? How do I know I'm not a crazy person? Before arriving at their house, I made a stop at a nearby gas station for a Red Bull to stay awake, and I nearly convinced myself to drive back home and abort the whole deal. The money isn't worth the anxiety. I made a promise, though, and I really try to honor that no matter how uncomfortable I've made myself. I carried on, and I found an easy, recognizable party destination as it had balloons out front and a sign posted, "Lordy, Lordy, look who's 39." The luminary of the evening had decided to celebrate the death of her 30s as opposed to the overdone welcome of her 40s. I get that. I flew to New Orleans, for my 40th, a place where even funerals have jazz processions. The home in which the party was at, is lovely. The birthday girl is roughly my age, as is her husband and her friends. But there were also children and what I assume were grandparents there. What do I play? Where do I begin? I'm steadfast, though, for my set list. My set list is forged on the fire of 1,000 shows in front of varying generations, having enough ammunition to make everybody happy at least once. I think I can feel it. I peter around for the right segue of songs for most of the night. I made a little small talk with a few people around me. I started to play rather quietly as a way to break the ice. More guests arrive, I brought the tempo up a bit. And by the end of the agreed duration of time I was to play, people were dancing and singing along. I'm sure that alcohol helped loosen up a good deal of it. And Jesus, I could have used some. But I was going to drive home immediately after the performance, and I've had enough trouble driving at night just from being tired, let alone anything else. After the set, the party goers threw modern dance music onto a large Bluetooth speaker and really cut loose while I packed up and slunk out the back door. I'm a ghost, a phantom. Moving a few trips of packed gear in cases back to my car and make my getaway. Another mass of single-serving acquaintances, temporarily happy they've met me, but also immediately ready to remember me simply as the guitar guy that played at the party. As with most gigs, it went much better than I anticipated. I'm not sure if fun was the word I'm searching for, but it didn't suck. At 43, I can't see myself diving back into this as a career, but I might have a few more events like this left in me. I'm not quite Mike Tyson yet. I didn't just stand there and let the clock run out to make a buck. I was mad about that at the time because I lost $100. I told all these young punks, I was like, Iron Mike's going to whoop that kid. And I put $100 on it. And then he just stood there and went, "Oh, no, Mike, what are you doing?" Sorry. I sang well, and Harry V played like the John Mayer wannabe that I usually am at a wider resort. My neck and my shoulder will need a day to unball, but otherwise I'm unscathed. It's a win, I guess, and by judge's decision. There you go. So that's a bit of my